Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Everybody, welcome. It's episode 76 of Everything Teams Phone Live. Brandon, I can't get over the jingle. I love the jingle. It gets me in the mood every single time.
You know, the jingle's awesome, but Bailey, I was just thinking it's November 1st. Maybe
it is, and I was just going to say we got some special holiday stuff coming.
We need some Easter egg. When I say Easter egg, I mean like Christmas ornaments that are like hidden, and then maybe a competition, like maybe give away like some Bluetooth headphones if someone can spot the ornament in the jingle.
We should give some stuff away.
You totally just skipped right over Thanksgiving, Brandon.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I go into every store in October, and there's already Christmas stuff up. So you kind of, our culture has, I guess, brainwashed us to not think about Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. So, Bailey, welcome to the show. We've got an amazing guest today. I'm super excited because we're going to take a little bit of a twisty, topsy-turvy little turn here, and we're going to deliver. This is a 5-series episode, everyone, so buckle your seatbelts because this is a pretty interesting one. We're bringing you a large enterprise. We're going to call them, and for legal reasons, we cannot say their name, but that's okay. Matt Carlson's here today with us to walk through his organization. We're going to call them the Magic Fun Park. We're going to call them the Fun Park. The Fun Park's journey into Microsoft Teams Phone. Because, Matt, you did this. You had some help, but you did this. You've done this. You've gone through this stuff, right?
I have, yes.
So I think there's going to be a ton of people in the world that are going to be interested in understanding, how'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Were you concerned about something? There's a lot of stuff to talk about, Matt. That's why we've got this laid out into five episodes. So we're going to try and knock that out and start this one off with a bang. But before we do that, Matt, we've got some massive sponsorship things. We've got a producer, Bailey Smith, over there in the left-hand corner for me. Bailey, are we still sponsored? Do people still pay for this stuff?
Yeah, they do. They sure do, Rick. Yes, welcome to the show, everybody, and happy Friday. This podcast is still sponsored by Momentum, where we help businesses connect, collaborate, and engage using Microsoft Teams. Now back to our host for episode 76.
Brandon, what do you think? It's pretty funny. We're still paying for this stuff. It's amazing.
I haven't seen the money, so I don't know. I guess I didn't fill out my direct deposit form correctly or something.
Well, we sent it all to Matt. Matt's got it. Cool. Matt's got it because it's like you got to pay people to be on this thing with us.
Today I'm drinking some tea to try to soothe my throat, and I'm like, where's my Everything Teams Phone Live mug? I mean,
oh, stop it. That's a different show. That's like a different show.
We're getting into like real talk show stuff now.
We are absolutely. We should probably get some of that stuff and some t-shirts. We had some t-shirts before, but we're ready for some new ones. Matt, welcome to the show. This is episode 76, and we want to dive into a bunch with it. We're going to take our time a little bit because we think it's important that organizations understand what it's like to do this whole migration. I'm curious, Matt. What did you migrate from? And then let's get into what's your role. Actually, let's talk about your history, your personal history, Matt. What did you do before? What do you do now? And then we'll get into that sort of what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on the show. I do appreciate it. So I kind of cut my teeth starting out in the collaboration space. So this is kind of, really getting a ground foundation of Exchange on-prem, Skype for Business, Link, all that good stuff. And I got in during a very transformative time when the switch was happening from Skype for Business to Teams. So really starting out from the ground up, I'd like to use that to my advantage, that I wasn't bringing a lot of antiquated way at looking at collaboration platforms. So I like to use that as this is what I really truly cut my teeth on and really enjoy and embrace the empowerment that it gives end users, that is Microsoft Teams. So starting out there, deployed, and really was working for a flagship state university that really embraced the change very early on. And then, of course, the pandemic accelerated all of that. And then right when Teams Phone came out, I mean, we were one of the first there right along with it, deploying 15,000 users Teams voice. So it was painful at first, but the journey was great, and the payoffs were even better.
So let me make sure I understand this right. So, okay, you come from this whole Skype for Business link, all that good stuff. So you come from some Microsoft roots there a little bit, right?
Yep.
But you go to a university and you move 15,000 users over at the university. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So
And
that was just the faculty and staff that had both Teams and Teams Phone. There was also 60,000 students as well that adopted Microsoft Teams. So, close to 75, 80,000 users.
so why I'm smiling, this is cool because I didn't know that piece about you, Matt. And so what's cool about this is that you've done this twice in large organizations. And is that right? Like now you're
3 times. Yeah. So,
oh,
yeah, progressively getting larger as I've progressed through my career. So there, and then one of the largest healthcare provider for the United States also deployed, assisted with the deployment of Teams and Teams Phone there as well. And then in my current role, doing the same thing, really truly adopting Teams and now Teams Voice and other fun stuff like MTRs and whatnot too.
what, like Brandon, like, this should be like 10 episodes because we basically met the kind of if you've done 3 massive Teams migrations, unless you work for Microsoft as an example, which this is pretty cool because you can really kind of walk us through the bumps, the bruises, we did this time, here's how we fixed it, and we never had to deal with that again. And it's just kumbaya, smooth sailing.
Yeah.
Why doesn't everybody do Microsoft Teams Phone? So this is great to have you on, Matt, because I think this is going to be really helpful for every enterprise CIO, VP of IT, director of IT who's been directed to go, hey, get us into Teams Phone and let's walk through the scaries and put them in the closet and just go, it's not a thing. Right.
And
so
I think it's going to be interesting, knowing that you've been through 3 larger transitions to Teams, as we unpack this, having you call out the similarities. Was there a common theme through all of those journeys? Were there unique challenges, whether it was healthcare, education, or now what I'll call just really large enterprise? And Rick, I think we found, how when you watch the big news organizations, they have their analysts they always tap into. I think Matt's our new analyst. I think we're just
you're the go-to resource. He doesn't know the data, but he's the new go-to resource. Fortunately, Matt, we get to work with the best of the business like you. Again, so thanks for being on. We get to work with guys like Satish, who works here at Momentum now. I think Satish as well.
Absolutely, he's a legend.
So it's amazing to have just good people surrounding us and bringing this information so that we can help cascade it out to the world because we're massive believers in Microsoft Teams. As I'm gonna give you the condensed version, Matt. Before Momentum, Brandon and I come from an organization called G12 Communications. We're the guys that jumped into Operator Connect. We're like number 7 in Operator Connect. We weren't a big team shop. We didn't understand Microsoft. We were just a traditional UC provider, okay? And one day I was driving to a partner I think it was in Idaho, Brandon, and I call Brandon up and I go, Brandon, man, I think this whole UC thing is about to be dumped on its head. And I think this whole UC space is going to be eaten by the collaboration platforms. And we'd been working on the Microsoft stuff for a little bit. We tied our NetSapiens platform to Teams and with direct routing, so we could kind of sort of deliver Teams that way. But ultimately, we were on the phone. We're like, Teams is just an amazing platform. Like, it is an amazing platform. Why is anyone out there selling a different platform? They should just get really, really good at Teams. And then you've got all the solutions that you can start to kind of veer off and go support and deliver to organizations. So I called Brandon that day and we basically said, all right, we need to be very, very good at Microsoft Teams. And at the time there was people going, we do Zoom, we do Teams, we do WebEx. I'm like, you know what? Let's just be really, really good at this one. And so since then, I mean, things have blown up for us. Brandon and I have, since come into Momentum along with the rest of the G12 team, and we're delivering tons and tons of seats and customer satisfaction to people looking to move to Microsoft Teams. And then part of this is getting to talk to experts like you, Matt, who help us share the experience with everybody out there and go, what do you need help with? Because this is such it's so good for your business. And part of that discussion down the road is what's done for the business, right?
Yeah.
So let's kick things off. Brandon, let's start from the ground zero, and maybe Matt can help us from ground zero. What does that look like? Oh, good. Go ahead.
I think I want to back up though, and I want to lean a little more into Matt on a personal side from a professional perspective around, like, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about how you get enterprises and organizations to adopt and to move to Teams Phone, and how you not only get the business to adopt that, but how you get the end user buy-in and you find those champions that go out and help you be successful. But from a professional perspective, you in the seat, I'm talking to partners and potential customers all day long where there's a little bit of sentiment when you start talking about Microsoft and you're talking about phone PSTN enablement, where there's this concern that, well, what about me? I used to take care of the Cisco, or I used to take care of the on-prem, or I used to take care of the UCaaS. What about me? And from your experience, do you have any thoughts around or any experience working with people, or even maybe you yourself, on how you overcame that, or you saw people overcome that, so that then you could focus on the business and that user adoption and that corporate adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical for companies to allow not only allow, but encourage their existing talent to really embrace the change. And I think it comes with, having an open mindset. It's very easy to get set in your ways. And, I've done this for, somebody comes to the table and is like, I've done this thing this way for a long time. Why should I change now? But, we all have to go through changes with technology. I mean, it's the nature of the beast, right? So I think, having the organization foster that open-mindedness and that growth mindset to really embrace those changes, providing opportunities for training and upskilling. Hey, these fundamental concepts, they still apply to Teams Phone, but they're done different. They may be done differently. And sometimes that can be scary or unknown. I also think, a lot of my role is being a translator for back and forth between, executive leadership, business stakeholders, and then the technical team. So and then the service itself, right? So understanding how I translate, hey, Teams Phone can do all of this great stuff that we've always been doing. It may be done slightly differently or exactly the same. It's just a matter of learning how to do that. And so being that translator, I think, is really, having a champion is really key to getting those technical leads and all the way down to, analysts, right, that are doing the day-to-day operations, giving them the opportunity to start learning the product ahead of time, making sure that they're on board, and really, having that buy-in at all levels of the organization is very critical, because if you've got one weak link somewhere, it can definitely cause some frustrations down the road for sure.
So along those lines then, Matt, and in any of the 3 migrations that you've done and the companies that you've been with and migrating those, have you seen the adoption by the technical staff that maybe wasn't? So like, who did manage the Cisco, who did manage the Avaya? Have you seen good positive transformation and that role having the capability to expand and be part of the business still in adopting that sort of the net new Teams environment, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the first migration that we did, we took all of our existing telecom analysts, and it was, hey, and instead of building out lines and extensions in Avaya, this is how we use PowerShell now, right? Because back then everything was PowerShell. I still personally prefer it, but it was now you get to learn a new skill, and you you approach it from a positive aspect of, hey, we're gonna upskill you, or we're gonna teach you something new, a new technology. And it was really successful. Those folks were able to, really embrace it. They went in with a good mindset, even though they were coming from a long history of Avaya on-prem. We were able to get those folks really adopted and moved over technically. And to this day, that's that they still manage it in-house, and they build their call queues every day and their auto attendants and enable users and manage their multiple connectivity types. So there is a 100% a successful path forward for those that have been managing older, I'll call them legacy, even though that's not always people don't always like using that terminology, but legacy infrastructure and telephony, and really embracing the change that is Teams Phone.
That's good to hear, right? Like I love to hear that, because I think it is important that there's a spot for everybody. There is a spot. The management still needs to happen. It just needs to happen differently. And I think I've heard people. It's easier. I mean, like, does it get easier? It's easier.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Brandon's already been interrupted.
Before we get too far down that easier road, because I'd maybe challenge you in a couple ways on that.
Sure.
But I would say, Matt, I totally agree with your sentiment around encouraging people to upskill and kind of giving them the culture that allows them to do that. And my only, I guess my experience is as we start talking about the enterprise and adoption, it is really, really important for leadership to start that message in a positive way. I've come from a background where we had the on-prem Avayas, we had the on-prem Ciscos, and it took one bad leader to get on an all-hands call and say, Avaya's dead. And it spooked all of our Avaya team to the point they exited, because the message was not conveyed in a way that said, hey, we have this new technology coming, and we're going to go do this, and here's how we're going to empower you guys to go do it. So I think it's very critical for our listeners to hear what you're saying about that empowerment and that culture around bringing people up into I'll call it the new world order, so to speak.
So okay. So then with that said, was the upskilling or kind of their adoption, or they're like okay with it sort of thing, was that post decision, or was that pre-decision? Like, hey, we're thinking about doing this Teams thing, guys. We may want to kind of get up to speed. Let's all figure this out. Let's all do this before we kind of head down that path. Or was it, we're going to Teams, guys, and we need everybody to hop on board, and let's go all learn together? Kind of what did that look like?
Yeah, I think it's usually the latter. I mean, I'm not naive. I know decisions are made at, the executive level, and not always, not every time. I mean, in a good organization, of course, you have thorough input from all of your technical leads and architects and whatnot. I think primarily it's been mostly the latter that I've seen, both in my experience and through my peers as well. Is, hey, we've made this decision. We've signed the papers already. It's on, right? And not only having that executive buy-in, embrace that change, but as you mentioned, Brandon, like, you got to be careful with how you work, how you're branding that internally, right? Because you don't want to spook off your knowledge leaders within the organization that have all of this. There's so Teams Phone, or telephony in general, I think is underappreciated. There's tons of technical aspects to it, and having that historical knowledge and potentially losing that, it can be a big detriment to a project. So yeah, you definitely have to embrace it the right way, in that, hey, we're giving you this is an opportunity for all of us to grow, learn a new skill. This is what the future looks like. This is change, right? Sometimes it's difficult. I've been on the difficult side of that change plenty of times, but you have to adopt and embrace it and keep moving forward.
In the 3 organizations that you've worked with, Matt, that you've done this with, were you always part of the decision-making process? Were you like, one of those guys that was like, hey, we're going to do this? Or were you leading the charge to, hey, we're going to do this? This is good for us as an organization?
Both, yeah. As a technical lead and kind of an architect role, I've definitely been involved in the decision-making process for how we're going to move forward. Or is it, even the conversation comes up where, hey, we're thinking about this. Is it feasible for our organization? So being part of those conversations. And there's others like my current role where the decision was made and I was brought in to execute. So kind of been on both sides of that coin. Both understanding the environment and providing input and knowledge to make an informed decision, and also on the reverse, which is, hey, we've made this decision. We need somebody to implement and move fast. So,
how much when you were, let's say, the first transition you did, and like from a personal growth perspective, I'm curious if at the time were you very telco centric and like, here's how the telco functions work, here's how the phone system things work, and has that evolved into here's the business challenges we're looking at? Because oftentimes I kind of preach like, hey, this whole team solves the business problems. Like, stop looking at the tech to solve something right now. Let's look at this is how we used to do it, as an example. Like, this is how we accomplish this. Let's look at this different way to accomplish this problem. The problem that we're trying to solve isn't a tech problem, right? It's a business solution. It's a business problem.
Yeah.
So now, do you see, are you more sort of in tune these days than in your first deployment about how you're solving a business solution and how the platform solves business solutions now? Is that a perspective that you take?
Yeah, absolutely. Even from the beginning, I didn't come from a telephony background. So when I was, I was more on the collaboration side, exchange, things like that. So when Teams Phone came up, it was, hey, you're going to lead this Teams Phone deployment, having no telephony experience, which was scary, but it was an opportunity for me personally to upskill and learn a new service. So I personally think it worked to my benefit because I was, again, as I mentioned, I wasn't coming in with this way of thinking that this is how we solve business solutions based on the technical limitations that existed at the time that they were initially deployed. So coming in with almost like a fresh set of eyes and understanding this is what I have to work with. And this is how we solve those business cases now. And almost like kind of having that out of the box thinking where we're not necessarily recreating the wheel or solving problems the same way we did 20 years ago. We're solving them how we would do today in a modern platform. And I think that was really the key to success there is let's not build another complicated telephony platform. Let's get to the root, the actual use cases and the needs of the business. And that's another big thing is understanding the needs of the business and not just how it was solved previously. How do we modernize that and simplify it with this new platform here?
So Bailey, we're going to take a clip of that and we're just going to play it over and over and over. That's going to be like our shorts, but it's going to be the only post we use. Sorry, go ahead.
So you say, identifying the needs of the business. I'd be curious from your perspective. I have my own opinion. How many of those defined needs, as you dug into business requirements, could be business process, could be workflows, could be whatever. How many of those needs did you end up kind of pushing off to the side as saying, these aren't actually that critical. We'll solve them if we can. And then how much of the business was okay with giving up their perceived need? I know I've seen it in other organizations, so I'm curious from your perspective what you've seen and experienced.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody thinks that they have the most important critical use cases, right? When you talk to individual people, and sometimes they're right, and the reality is sometimes they're not. So it's really understanding that even when you're talking to business leads and you're getting, I personally, I really enjoy getting into the field and really understanding. I mean, I'm even down to like just walking around and doing site audits myself, right? Or tagging along with other field techs, and just really understanding how that business operates gets you really plugged into what are we really solving for here, and what are the actual use cases. At the end of the day, you can't always solve for every single scenario. Sometimes you have to shoehorn things in a little bit, and that can be painful for both the technical team and the business units. I think it's also managing expectations. So I'm usually careful with going in, not promising the world. I try to under promise, over deliver sometimes, and set those expectations. And it's also about the framing too. So if you frame it in a way like, hey, we get to modernize this process, right? To them, to me, I'm thinking, oh, how am I going to solve for this, right? But to them, I'm displaying, hey, we're gonna make this better for you. We're gonna make you more efficient. We're gonna take your time off of doing, these complex things that you were doing in the past, and modernizing them. So sometimes there's give and take though as well. So like I said, there's sometimes you can't solve for everything, and there has to be compromises. But it's setting those expectations and really showing support. So it's not just, hey, we're done this and we're done. You've got to really be engaged and show that long-standing support with those. Everybody knows who their special departments are and who needs extra hand-holding. So I think following through with that extra little engagement, or hey, I found this article or this little training video, I thought maybe it would help you. Even things like that go a long way in making people feel heard, even when they had to give up something or significantly change their process. So
I think that's huge perspective as a good takeaway. And it goes back to Rick, what you're saying about, not staying in the rut of the technical solution, but looking at the overall business need and then solving for that. And then I love how you said it, Matt, about, maybe you can't solve it, but now the story is, but look at all of these other things that we're bringing to you. And I think that just goes back to creating the champion, right? You're starting as the champion, but then you're, at some point you're bringing up fellow champions to help, spread that message throughout the organization.
Exactly. Yep.
I'm going to jump to the end here, and I'm just kidding. It's not the end, but I'm going to jump. A question for you, and this is just out of pure curiosity. In every scenario, in all three different migrations, would you say that the benefits have been far and away more than expected, what was expected, or under what was expected? I'm trying to be fair here and understand what, if you gave a grade.
I think we just lost Rick.
I think we did lose Rick.
His iPad battery just died. For those of you listening, he's on an iPad today, so who knows where he's at. I think, though, Matt, his question was, what's your kind of, I'll call it scale of 1 to 3, what's your opinion of, where did the expectation fall? Under, average, or above?
Yeah, I think it's definitely between 2 and 3. Depending on who you talk to. Personally, I think it's more on the over delivered, on the expectations and the capabilities. One of the things I always, when I'm talking with anybody, usually my stakeholders or frontline workers, it's this is going to empower you to use your phone how you want to use it or how you need to use it. And so in that aspect, I think it over delivers because, you look at the main selling points, right? Flexibility, take your phone anywhere you want to go, mobile app, web browser, desktop app, whatever it may be. Use any device that you want, right? Those are real tangible benefits that everybody's going to see. I think where it over delivers is, I always tell people to do this, and I feel like they kind of laugh at me. Go into your team's settings and just really understand what some of those settings do. And the power that you have at the click of a button by going to your settings in your team's client that happen instantaneously is, 30 years ago would be unfathomable, because you can simultaneously ring your cell phone. You can forward your calls instantly, have custom out of office voicemail greetings that follow your Outlook calendar, out of office events. I mean, you create almost mini call queues with, as answering groups for your personal line. I mean, the list goes on. And, in the past, that was submit a ticket to IT, right? Wait 5 days for fulfillment. Okay, I'm back from my sabbatical. Now I've got to submit another ticket to, reverse all of those changes. And now it happens instantly. So I think in, the selling points of Teams Phone, they deliver 100%. I think where it over delivers is that increased flexibility, and use it how you want to use it, not the box that you're put in with some of the previous generations of telephony.
Love it. Thanks for picking up there. I had a call come in and I was like, oh, using headphones. It threw me off there for a minute. A question along those lines then. So if it over delivers in some areas, delivers exactly what you think, and then more in all the areas, is there in any of those cases, not regret, but in any of those cases, is there sort of like where you're like, man, it used to be done that way, and I kind of really did like that way, or is it just like far and away like this is just from an infrastructure, from a business perspective, it just makes sense all day and Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense all the time, almost in every scenario, to move to Teams Phone. I do think that over the past 3 large migrations, and then also a lot of SMB projects that I've done as well. I think what I've learned personally over the years is that, and I love Teams, but I will also be a critic of it because I love it and I want it to get better. Is go for soft phones only. And strategically deploy your Teams desk phones. And that was a big change too, because right, I mean, in the past it was only a desk phone. So I mean, you have people that have been working their entire professional career and they've only ever really interacted with their office phone via a desk phone. So not only are you bringing a cloud soft phone to the table, but there is the option of having desk phones. And I think, it's really have to have a strategic decision on, is that also how we want to deploy, where you have both that more traditional presence of your desk phone, and then also have your soft phone, or are we going to start really pushing for that soft phone only experience? And that's what I at first I was, hey, let's do both. We have the best of both worlds. Why not do it? And I've learned that let's move more towards soft phones only. Plus, that's just another cost benefit of the service. Now you don't have, let's be honest, the desk phones, their life cycle is a lot shorter than an old school analog phone that's been sitting on a desk for 20 years, right? So let's take this opportunity to get rid of that hardware dependency altogether, not only on the infrastructure side, but also in the end user experience too.
Yeah, Rick and I, sorry, I'm going to pick on you, Rick. Him and I come from big service provider world, and we came from the world of, we had that Cisco or that Polyphone sitting on our desk. And, Rick and I obviously worked many years together, and, it used to be everyone in the office was on speakerphone, and you're yelling at people to mute their lines because you can hear echoing through the different offices. And then like, as you're talking about, hey, let's move to a soft phone world, it's making me realize, back then it would have been a lot harder to just shove a soft phone into someone's hands and say, adopt it. And then you come post-pandemic era where everything was catapulted into use this collaboration platform. And to me, now you've got people that are so adopted to the collaboration platform that maybe the story for that user is, hey, now we're just going to enable your phone. It's a little easier to tell that story than it was pre-pandemic, when Rick and I were yelling at each other over speakerphone instead of over a Teams meeting.
Yeah. I didn't switch to pure soft phone until I moved into a new house like 3 years ago, and I set up my office, and I didn't have the LAN, my LAN cable sort of pulled to my desk area because I used to have like 10 phones on my desk because I was like the phone guy. I love being the phone guy. And I moved into the new house, and I had 4 monitors at the time. Put the 4 monitors up, and they're on a bracket and all that good stuff, right? I put that all up, and I got my keyboard, and I got this big table. It's my desk now, and I was like, do I really want the dangly cord slapping around, my desk? Do I really want, the handset? And I started like I was 2 weeks into the house, and I had been on the soft phone. I didn't even realize. I'm like, oh shoot, I never even plugged in all the hardware that I had. I was still sitting in these clear containers to unbox. I'm like, I put those away in the closet and never pulled them out again. And that was pretty much it. That was done, and never went back to a physical phone. Headsets, cycled through headsets, to find the thing that you like the most. But
Yeah.
but boy, it was. I think you're absolutely right, though. Let me just get to it. I think you're absolutely right. I think if you deploy soft phones, I look at it from a deployment perspective. I go, boy, it's so much easier to deploy soft phones. It's probably a better thing to go, we're going to train you on using your soft phone and spend that time up front to get people familiar with how they're going to operate in the future. Instead of a lot of organizations, Matt, will go, we're going to take a poll. We're going to take a poll. And did you do that your first time around? Well, let's take a poll. Who needs a physical phone? Who doesn't need a physical phone? And you did. Now, 2 of them, you said, hey, that, you went through that. Now the third or whatever, you're like, and we're doing soft phone, guys. This is how we're going to do it. Is that how it happened?
Oh yeah. First one was let's replace like for like. Even though it's a cloud solution, let's deploy a desk phone. We learned quickly that we needed to modify that approach. And then the last, my more recent ones have really been soft phone only, and really getting that. Not only, again, everything starts with your leadership, right? You can't. It's a lot easier for me to go and sell a new soft phone only service with no desk phones when I have executive buy-in than it is to not have that, and then kind of, I can kind of point the finger like, hey, look over there. They said this is what we're doing. I'm here to make it, a good experience, right? So it does make my job easier when that's the case. But yeah, soft phones all the way. But I think you also have to acknowledge that there has to be exceptions to that. I mean, I'm again not naive. I know that, of course, things like common area phones, right? Those inherently are just desk phones sitting in a shared space. So I think it's, finding what works right for you and your organization and your use case for those scenarios. And then, again, there's going to be executives and admin assistants and things like that, personas like that there's no getting around it, and that's okay, right? We can plan for the exception, but it's certainly not what we advertise.
Got it. Okay. And I think at a university, as an example, you probably had like, I'm not going to call him the grumpy old professor, but like you probably had some like people that were like stuck in their ways. Like, I need a physical
100%.
device, right?
Yeah, 100%. I have had this exact phone on my desk for 20 years, and you're coming in here and telling me I got to get rid of it. Yeah, sorry, that is what we're saying, but it's going to be better.
How did they like it? How does that person adapt, and do they adapt? And then if you now you're going to this where you said you learned quickly that you needed to modify the approach. I want to understand why you needed to. What made you learn quickly that you had to modify that approach? So if you could answer those two.
Yeah, so the first one, most of them will. Yeah, they'll adapt. I mean, it'll grind. It's hard for them, and they may never admit it and feel and embrace it eventually. And then there's some that will just come right out and say, yeah, I was wrong, and I've had those people come to me and say, this has been a better solution. It's because of the flexibility. When we all went home for 2 years, now they've got a phone that they can take with them. They're not losing those calls or dialing in to check their voicemail, right, with their voicemail pin and all that stuff. So, and then there's a very small percentage that just they'll never admit, whether regardless of how they feel, they'll never admit it. And maybe their use case warranted that. I would argue that probably for a while, but yeah. So you're always going to have your holdouts, but I would say 80% embrace it or are open to it right away, and then you've got your 10% on either end of your extremes.
All right.
Your second question, what remind me again?
It was that you made the decision. You were doing both phones and soft phones, and you quickly made the decision to adjust that because of what reason?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who's been in the Teams phone game for a while now knew that the desk phone struggled at the very beginning quite a bit. So, whether it was underpowered hardware within the physical device itself or a lot of bugs. I mean, hey, at the time, Teams phone was still cutting edge and there was growing pains. So, and they've definitely matured that firmware release cycles and bug squashing and whatnot. So that was really it was the hardware itself. Nothing to do with the service or the reliability of the service. It was more just the hardware. But again, I think over the last few years, that's transformed quite a bit. All the OEMs have learned that lesson, I think. At least that's what I get from talking with all of them. I think that's gotten much better, but that's really why we adjusted that strategy.
Got it. Okay. So Brandon, I'm going to sum this up, Brandon, and let's see if you were listening. I'm going to go and Bailey, we may want to write these down, Bailey. These are going to be interesting. I think I'd love to take away, Matt, 5 sort of like, we haven't even got to this, here's the things to look out for, all the team, but starting, ahead of the curve here, ahead of that decision, I feel like I've pulled out 5 things that are pretty interesting that you've said. Number 1, soft choice only, right? Or soft phone only deployments. Number 2, get executive sponsorship to make the decision so you can cascade the decision cascade the message that this is where we're going and this is what we're going to have. This is what we're going to do. Number 3, we've got to take the time to go upskill. Now, upskill sometimes happens post-decision, but regardless, the decision is made and now the team has transferable skills and they should look at it as an opportunity to go upskill and become familiar with a new environment instead of being shut to the change and being an anti versus being a champion and stuff like that. So is that 3 or is that 4? That's 3. All right, Brandon, you've got 2 for us.
Have you? Oh man, I thought you had all 5. I would say one of the big ones is this telling the story. I know you kind of mentioned the upskilling and creating some champions, but it's the kind of going back to the give and take, the compromise, hey, we can't accomplish this for you. But the takeaway is as you prepare and as you plan and you're laying out the components of, okay, here's how we're going to go do it. I think a big one is, spinning that message in a really positive way that says, listen, you might have to give this, you've done it 20 years this way, but look at all of these other things we're bringing to the table for you. And at the end of the day, this is going to empower you to be really successful and efficient in your current role. So that's number
4, the positive communication of what that is going to look like, right? Is that okay? Okay. And number 5, I think there's a 5 in there, Matt. And I was thinking about it and I had it while Brandon was talking. I had it, but I lost it now. It fell out. What do you think number 5 is? If we took, we've gone through these, like what's the final thing like you think we should take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's really understanding what the organization wants to accomplish when they are making the decision to move to Teams. I mean, cost is always, of course, going to be a big factor or a majority factor for a lot of your, executive leadership. But, what are our other success factors look like and how are we going to measure them throughout the course of your migration? So I think it's really what are you looking to get out of this and how do we measure that as we progress through the journey of Teams Phone, I think would probably be 5th one for me.
I love it. That's Bailey. If we have those all sort of jotted down, we're going to post those because I think those are all really critical sort of points to take away from a let's migrate to Teams discussion to get the organization in the right mindset to migrate to Teams? Oftentimes we talk to customers and they're like, they've already made the decision, but I feel like they may have skipped some of that sort of groundwork that they need to lay, and understanding how it needs to be communicated, and understanding that the executive sponsor needs to go from the treetops. We're doing this, right? So there's a lot of those things I think are sometimes skipped, even though there's somebody that comes and says, hey, I'm the champion, we want to do this, right? It's maybe not, it's not sold all the way through the org.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah.
So this has been really interesting. We're going to keep these episodes a little bit shorter because we've got 5 of these things to do. We want to make sure that we capture all of this. And I think this is just, again, great for all the enterprises to listen to someone who's done it 3 times. And that was a shocker for me. So it's exciting to hear you've done this 3 times, each progressively getting bigger. Can I ask, what's the final count right now, Matt, of what's your latest, sort of migration looks like? Is that 100,000 users, 110,000 users? What does that look like?
In total throughout my career?
No, this last, the 3rd organization.
It's probably, we're still early, probably around the 10,000 mark, but it's more of a slow roll, but it's working its way up.
All right. Very good. Okay. What's the total going to be at some point?
Probably closer to 50 to 100.
50 to 100,000 users. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, university, whatever it was, a healthcare organization, and now entertainment company type thing. So this has been helpful for me. I think helpful for us to share with everybody. Brandon, any final comments?
No, Matt, we appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting into the next, maybe episode or 2 where we start talking about kind of like now you're rolling your sleeves up and the rubber's going to meet the road, and how you begin to demonstrate, okay, you've made this plan, you've prepared, you've got the executive leadership buy-in, you've started upskilling people. Now, looking forward to talking about how do you go actually demonstrate that and show, like you said, show that measurable, these steps that you can measure against to show the org, like, look, this is what we're going to get out of this. So that's what I'm looking forward to as we roll on to episode 77 and on.
There we go.
Looking forward to it.
Matt, thanks for joining us this Friday. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Everyone out there listening, comment if you got questions for Matt. Take a look at him. We'll put his LinkedIn bio up there. But if you've got questions for him, shoot him over. We're going to go through this progression of migrating large organizations to Microsoft Teams, what it means for you internally, what it means for the business, and how Teams is an amazing platform all across the board. So thanks for joining us. Episode 76, that is a wrap. Bailey, take us out, Bailey.